like 23 years now or more. And I'm just really happy to share what I've learned over time. It's like I said, it's quite a bit of material. Some of it, because I mean, the poster is the first thing that everyone makes pretty much in science, the first presentation. But there's little hints and tricks and, making sure to tell a good story and things like that. And I just want to have you thinking about those things the next time you're putting together a poster. So I am going to share my screen right here, and I will start. I'm going to shift my camera over so that it's on my screen that I'm presenting from so I can see. So this is a 30-minute talk, taking a poster from good to great. And it should be forwarding now. Hello, baby. There we are. So the content, we're going to talk a little bit about what is a poster. A poster is a story, something about the methodology of putting together one and presenting one smoothly, and how to put a thesis on your poster, or essentially how to know how to subset your thesis onto multiple posters. Actually, that's like the best plan. But yeah, we're going to be going for half an hour, and then there's other activities that are going to take place. So most of you have seen posters. Here's 3 different examples. Here's a smaller presentation here over in the UC, as opposed to posters at a very large conference. And sometimes it's even a little challenging to put them together or to give a poster, because sometimes they really cramp you near other people, and it could get noisy, and it's just sort of a variable format of giving a scientific talk. But there's a lot of commonalities for posters themselves, even between fields. But you could see there's some variation where you present them. A poster is a form of scientific expression. It allows you to tell the story of your research, and it's actually visually augmented discussion or interaction. If you just try to tell someone about your research, you're going to be doing funny things with your hands and saying, this climbed like that, and this changed with this time, or this is a subset of the larger thing, and you'll be talking with your hands and everything. Or you might just resort to grabbing the handy napkin next to you so you can draw something out to make your discussion clearer. And that's the cool thing about a poster. Anytime you get to a point where you need to explain something and you're finding you're doing weird stuff with your hands, or wishing you had a photo or an image of some sort, you can put them on posters, because you want to make it the easiest visually augmented discussion that's super understandable as you possibly can. They last 5 to 10 minutes. Viewers come to you at a big conference. You've submitted an abstract, and people could even pre-review those and plan to come and see you. But at other times, they just are wandering around and are attracted to your poster, and you might just chat with them. Posters usually have very new information. It's the newest information you could get a hold of pretty much in science, except for maybe like a visiting speaker. If you go with a paper, it was published recently, but the work might have been done 2 years ago by the time they get the paper out. A poster, it never fails that someone is trying to put it together and trying to find a way to print it the day before the actual conference. So it's really, really fresh data, and it's exactly what's going on the field right now. So it's super important to go to conferences and see that type of thing, and you do it by seeing the posters. It's always new info. It always has characteristic sections and headings, although the appearance and content can vary by field. But yeah, so whenever you're resorting to a napkin, or I had a kid today who was giving a presentation, and he was doing all these hand motions, and I'm going, oh my, that could have just been an image, and you would have solved that whole thing. So columns and figures, usually you put about 4 columns on a poster if you have a reasonable amount of data. You try not to do more than that. Usually it's 36 by 54 in my templates. PowerPoint goes up to 56 inches. You could do that. You just sort of subdivide them evenly. I have a template where I've divided it into 4. A 3 column's good for when you have almost no data at all, or a proposal. So those are easy to do. Usually they're about 36 inches tall. If you're getting it 36 by 54 and still have too much info, you can actually enlarge it up to 42 inches tall, and that's a reasonable height. Once it starts getting more than that, it's almost like this giant thing you have to run around. But yeah, a good size is not the same size as the poster board. 4 by 8 is not something you want to do. So anytime you need to explain something, you need a figure. In your introduction, you're going to introduce your work, and we'll talk more about that. But you could have an image of an existing model, an eye-catching photo, something that helps you tell your story better. In methods, sometimes people do a flow chart. You could do a flow chart of your entire project and show which part of your entire project or thesis you're discussing now, because your poster is not your entire thesis generally, because it's too long. It's usually you're giving them over the life of your project or the life of your thesis. And if you put like the major steps of your thesis there, I'm talking with my hands, the major steps of your thesis there, and put a little box around the part you're going over now, that very much could easily convey what the whole big story is and what you're doing now, where it fits in that context. But at the same time, the poster can focus on only that part there. You don't have to have the methods for your entire thesis or anything like that. I don't know. Hopefully that made sense. If not, y'all can ask questions. But you'll want to, let's see here, methods could be a flow chart, like I said, but you also probably want to describe both, the techniques a little bit and the actual experiments, how they were set up. You could talk about that as well and have those there. Your results, it's usually figures and line graphs. If you try to do tables, it's kind of hard for people to understand them quickly. You could put them there, but it takes a little more explanation. The figures and line graphs can show the trends. Usually you don't put your raw data. So results are there, and when you're actually putting the text down for the results, it's usually you try to put it near the figure. You don't put your figure at the bottom and then the description of your figure like at the top of the next section of your poster. Discussion, that's how everything came out. Your results are your new results, but you don't interpret them. In your discussion, you interpret them and you start kind of narrow and summarize what you got and bring them out again to, how it's implicating the field and then the world and what you're doing next in your future directions, that kind of thing. That goes in your discussion. And then you have your references. Almost all fields recommend, or it's a common practice to have citations in the actual poster. So you need to have references that align with those citations. And it's just polite. Your abstract usually doesn't have it, but everything else, your intro, you're going to have citations, methods, discussion, because you're going to compare it to what other people found in the past. So you could have little citations there, and each needs a reference. And then acknowledgements, that's good there. It's usually who funded you, your grant numbers, anybody who helped you who isn't an author, any potential conflicts of interest. If you're funded by a company that could influence the results that you got, you need to put it there. And here's the biggest hint: whatever you put on the poster, you have this whole poster, whatever you put on it, if you put a figure on there or an extra little picture of something, or you think it makes it understood better, when you're walking through that poster, you have to mention anything on that poster. So don't go and just fly by. Here you put an interesting picture of your phenomenon there, but you think they're going to look at that while you're talking to them on something else, then you're asking them to be distracted. So make sure that you're covering everything that you put on your poster. Anyway, so here is my template, and you're welcome to it. I have where it is at the end, but you can see it's 4 columns here. There's the characteristic parts, the intro, the methods. And the intro, I had a sub part there. I did it like a purpose. If it's a student conference and you want to win a poster competition, sometimes you could make sure to put the purpose and your hypothesis there. That's like the bottom part of the intro, essentially. It can be integrated into the introduction. Oh, here's the thing: never throw away your intro because some of it's in your abstract. Your abstract is completely different. Your intro needs to be standalone in the complete thing. And you don't, on my template, don't leave intro and background on there. Sometimes people call them different things. Decide to use one or the other. So here's a methods, and it has a little bit of a figure that's showing what's going to be done. You could do that if you like. Here's some results. It's usually figure-based. There's instructions down there too, but here's the figure, here's the words that describe it. And if there's like one particular part that's the super important part, you can put a square around it and do whatever you want to. So here's your results, and it's usually figure based. This writing right here would not be there. This is just describing what you put there. But your results are usually figure result, that type of thing. Your conclusions, I already mentioned that. It's kind of, you go from your findings and then out to what it's important, what's important. And if you wanted to grab this template, it actually has those words written on it to give more a reminder of what I said. Your references, and here's the acknowledgements. Boop, boop. There are field specific variations. Here's things to remember. Whatever I'm putting here, if you're a chemist, you want fewer words. If you're a physicist, you might put crazy colors all over it. If you're a kinesiologist, you're going to have tall, skinny posters. And there's probably more fields that do their own thing, but do know that there are field specific variations. And you're making it so that your PI likes it. And in fact, your PI is always right. If I tell you something here and your PI hates it, you follow your PI. The only time you really want to get a little firm with them is if you're in a competition and it says it needs to have a hypothesis in it or something like that, but your PI usually just doesn't. I just have my phone go off, so it's distracting me. There we go. Your PI usually will just sort of imply a hypothesis. For a student conference, you might want to just tell them, it's like, hey, it's one of the rubrics. I want people to make sure they see it, my judge. So, you can put it there and underline the word hypothesis, so little things like that. But most of the time you're following what your PI. You also don't want to apply for a conference without getting their approval that you can present something. So things like that. And if you want to do something different, just remember for when you're in charge. So here's a trick question, actually. So which one is the correct poster? And I'll just let you look at some of the different fields. This is one of the kinesiology. Look, oh, it's tall. Here's a bio. Here's a chemistry one. Where are the words? Doggone it. I tried to make chemists add words once, and it much annoyed PI in chemistry, so I stopped. Here's just this one really long, skinny poster. This one has like no color because our research is serious and I don't want to have any of that darn color on there. And then this one, it's like, oh my, but all of them are the correct. I'd have you guess, but I won't be able to see who's who. So they're all the correct poster. A physicist, they commonly go a little crazy on posters. They don't have to, but some of them do, and it's perfectly acceptable if their PI allows it. So different fields, slightly different things. I love this one in the upper right because it's very clean looking. It doesn't use that much blue, so it's not going to use up all the ink in my printer, but everything stands out very nicely. I think it looks very organized, and it's essentially called white space unless it's blue, except it's blue. But they separated the sections that way, and you see all the lines, it's beautifully aligned and all that. I really like that poster. But the chemist loves theirs too. So there we go. Anyway, so if you think about the best poster or oral presentation you've ever seen, was it 100% about the science? What made you like this particular one? Was it large, impressive words showing how smart they were? Very formal, serious science. We are so serious. Complex figures and tables. Wow, look at all the work they did. That's so amazing. Huge number of experiments to show what they've done. Oh my God, it takes 25 minutes to present it. No, it's usually how good a story they tell and how much they connect with you. Some of the best presenters, they just tell a really good story. It makes things understandable. They still can use technical words, but they support them. They define them well. And that type of thing is so important. If you look at a TED Talk, it's a little informal for a scientific talk, but not that much. And you see the people talk and they engage with the audience and they tell an awesome story. You want to do that as much as possible, but still, have a serious scientific story here. it's sort of a careful balance of that, but you don't want to have a boring talk. You don't want to just, be wooden and scared looking. You can engage with the people you're talking with. And if you love your science and you let it show, all the old professors get really happy. It's like, oh, look, it's someone, I'm passing my field off to these people and I love them because they love their science. So you're there trying to sell yourself and your work. You're a well-prepared professional. You need to practice a lot. You don't want to just go, what am I doing? I don't know. I'm just going to wing it. I presented this 6 months ago. It's not going to be a problem. Yeah, it's a problem. Especially if there's a competition. You want to practice the night before, but you even practice the day of the presentation before a judge gets there or before the person you want to impress. Get a friend and run it because it warms up your brain. So you really want to do that. Never apologize for it. A lot of times people go, it's preliminary data. A lot of the times posters are just part of your research. By nature, it's preliminary data. Don't say I can't present a poster, it's just preliminary. You're not presenting an entire scientific publication. Well, it is a little publication, but it's not a refereed journal article. Those, we need all this data. Posters are kind of seat of your pants where you're at. And you need some data, and it needs to be enough that your PI is happy, but it doesn't need to be beautiful. And preliminary data is data on a poster. Make sure to show up on time. Make sure to show you're enjoying yourself. Never lie or bluff. If they push you and you don't know something, just don't lie. Admit when you don't know something. It's a lot better because they kind of expect you to not know something. And sometimes people will even ask questions to see how you'll act when they run into something you don't know. It's a weird little test some people do. So don't worry about it. You're okay. Be familiar with literature foundations of the techniques. Be familiar with how you carried out things. If someone just gave you results from something that you did further analysis on, you're responsible for fully knowing how that original data was collected. You got to know all of that because PhDs will jump on you on that one almost instantly. It's just something they'll ask. So, they just gave me the data from this prior study and now I ran this. They're going to bug you. You're going to be bugged. It's going to be an immediate, asking of questions there. So be familiar with your literature, know what your technique is doing. Well, I ran it through the whatever weird column thing, or I did this strange data cleansing thing that's whatever. Well, know what the implications of those things are. You got to understand what you did, so you sound smart. Know the context of your work, what's the foundations for it, who did stuff in your lab before even. How important is your work? What are the implications? I was doing work on developmental stuff, developmental gene in the developing limb. And in my thesis practice, someone said, well, where is that gene working in human beings? And does it cause disease? And I went, no, it's just true. It does. It did. And I had no idea because I had such narrow view. Make sure you know a little bit about what you're doing and where it came from and the context, the larger world a little. And finally, though, if someone starts pushing you and your data is right, or they say, well, why did you use that technique? I don't understand why you use that technique. And why did you do that? And it's like, it's standard practice in my laboratory. It needs to be consistent between prior research we've been doing and this one, which is a follow-up to whatever. And, just that they will be happy with that. Some of them scientists like finding holes and poking them. So just if you don't have a hole or your hole is justified there, or whatever is going on, they like it when you stand up for yourself. Don't immediately cave. Oh no, you're right. I suck. My work is horrible. Oh no, don't do that. Just stand up and they'll like you that you have self-respect. So here's the visually appealing we talked about. I love the left one so much better than the right one. But this right one, the PI likes things the way they are. So there they go. I like taking things like I would not end this poster way up here in the middle. I would make it, there's a sneaky thing, if you change the font by 1 point, which you can do, you can change it not by 6 or 7 points or whatever PowerPoint normally jumps up. You could change it by 1 point and stretch things out, and other people don't notice it. No one could really detect a 1 point change in font. So you can have a poster that's aligned a lot better than otherwise. Once you get to 2 points or 3 points difference, then people aren't noticing. Anyway, so here's more about the content being a subset, and I'll go over this quick because I did. So your thesis might have 4 or more posters built into it. You know, it's not the whole thing unless your PI wants you to summarize your whole thesis on your poster, but then it's going to take you a whole lot longer than 8 to 10 minutes to talk about it. You must fit that into the presentation time. What's cool is you can put slightly different titles on each one because it's different things you've done, and that counts as more posters. And each time you've submitted an abstract, and an abstract is a publication, and respect your abstracts. You want to have more abstracts, especially if you don't have that many refereed journal articles yet. Abstracts can really count. I've seen people, reviewers talk about them on some really big grants. Oh, they don't have a publication out quite yet, but look at all these abstracts. Yeah, let's give them this grant. So respect your abstracts and know that slightly different titles between different stages of completing your project, that is 100% acceptable practice. And your prior, what used to be your focus on one poster, it's now in the past because you stepped on, but that becomes part of your intro, the foundational stuff. And we found this, now we're looking at this, and that's cool. And the rest of your thesis is like, in the future, we're going to do these. So, it's just, you move around or move across it. Anyway, fit the whole thing, whoops, go back in your presentation time, different titles, different abstracts. You want 1 to 4 experiments on there. If your PI wants more, that's fine, but good luck on explaining it in 8 to 10 minutes. There we go. Did I skip one? Yes, I did. Whoop. So here's the good stories. Remember the rubric. If you're going to have a competition, remember the rubric. You'll find a rubric online generally and just focus on it. But for just an individual poster, for the biggest impact, develop one that can catch and maintain their attention. You don't want people floating away while you're talking to them. That whole little talker in their head, a lot of people have one. You don't want to let that go. So you want to be super clear. They don't have all these weird questions in the middle because you've confused them. You can make the poster talk focusing on their understanding. Ooh, is it already 1:28 and I'm ending this at 1:30? Yikes. Okay. Let's see. Anyway, let me do this and I will summarize this. So make sure that you focus on their understanding. If you're going to a professional conference, it could be science only, but make sure your introduction can absolutely reach people who are not as versed in your science. So you need to keep people interested. On a mixed student conference, you need to have an excellent introduction and solid figures. It needs to be attractive. You want to have, each poster needs like an 8 to 10 minute talk, but you also want to have a 3-minute talk and a 1-minute talk. So I think at this point, it's pretty much a lot of what I've said, but make sure, again, when you're telling the story, you have those implications. You need strong transitions. You need great figures, and you could walk them through some strong conclusions, and then end strong. This is where everybody messes up. They don't know how to end a poster. It's like, oh, I'm done. Instead, it's like, can I tell you anything else about my work? And or something just like that. Make sure you can land your talk and approach a figure. Don't just wave at a figure and make them talk. You actually know where you're going, and you've done a good transition. And since we did this experiment, we found the following, which is, it shows a relationship between treatment with whatever and the substance X. Here's the tumor. We're studying tumor diameter, and we're looking, per week. We had 4 different treatment groups, and then whatever, as you could see, the trends of whatever and whatever were the highest. This is where we finally found a difference in whatever. So you know exactly where you're going to point. So make sure to know how you're going to transition to a slide and where you're going to point to a slide. And make sure that if anybody asks you questions at a practice, you need to go and look them up if you didn't know them, because someone else will ask you the same thing. But never apologize or burst of tears or get upset or get angry or anything during questions. Just, practice and know more next time and say, I'll look that up, or, I hadn't thought about that. Thank you. I'll look that up and get back to you. That's perfectly fine. And here we've kind of gone to that. But the big thing is you are in control of your talk. You want to have a good pace. You look your people in the eye most of the time. You never make them read, because then you've lost them. You never just wave at a figure. As you can see in figure 3, I found whatever. You're giving them a choice. Do they look at that figure or do they listen to you? And that's why you do the walkthrough, so you're both at the same place. Try not to drop off at the end of sentences or turn and face the poster away from them. Try not to use too much or weird distractions or use your hands too much to talk. Try having people watch you and give you big hints and practice a lot. And just have a strong conclusion and your strong ending transition. Always leave time for critiques. Have other people, look at it in your lab, but also have people outside your lab look at it, because your lab has lingo it's developed. The rest of the world might not know it. And I think I have to finish. I have some stuff on actually constructing it, but I think that could, you're using PowerPoint, set it up the size it's supposed to do. Don't put tiny images on and think you could stretch them and have them look good when printing. They won't. You could do text boxes. Avoid in a text box having something checked that says resize. You don't want the inside font size resizing automatically, and you could change that in the actual text box. And grouping things is wonderful. If you need to move things around and keep them all together, you could go zoop and group them, and there they are. And I have templates, and I'm sure the grad school has one as well, and you're welcome to use it. And that's it. Escape. I almost went through